Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, mammals. If YouTube is going to let me, I'm going to post this video on Tuesday, April the 28th. I know I've already posted an assignment for today, but I'm just trying to get the last of our new content out there so that you can focus on getting all of your work done. I can focus on getting things graded and answering your questions where you need it. And the good news is, this is the last of our new material. The only things that are coming after this is we're going to do a web simulation of trophic levels, and I'll be posting out in place of your final our study guide, modified to reflect the handful of things that we didn't get to. And really, there were just only a handful of things. I'm super proud of how well you guys have worked and maintained the normal things that I would teach, even in this chaotic session. So give yourselves a pat on the back. The last of our new material is going to be on ecological relationships, and that's going to include the vocab words trophic level and the 10% rule, and these 5 kinds of relationships: mutualism, commensalism, competition, parasitism, and predation. So you'll see these terms pop up in the questions I've got posted to go along with this. Trophic levels are just kind of a fancier term for what you guys might have normally thought of as a food web. And I've got a super simplified set of trophic levels here just to show the point. And the main point that I'm trying to get across is what is known as the 10% rule, which relates to the amount of energy at each trophic level within a food web. At the bottom trophic level are going to be things called producers, and these are the kinds of organisms that can take energy from the sun and convert it into a biologically useful energy source, probably glucose. This is mainly going to be plants. However, there are some weird things out there like blue-green algae. It's not just strictly plants like we think of, but in most of the food webs that you'll encounter, the producers are going to be plants. Everything in higher levels are going to be some form of a consumer. The primary consumer eats the plants. Higher level consumers eat lower level consumers. This is a super simplified one, like I said. A more realistic one would have our top level consumer not limited to eating the secondary level consumer, but perhaps eating from the primary consumers, and there could be a parallel series of different animals that are interacting with each other also. But this shows the point, which is the 10% rule, which states that the energy in a trophic level is only 10% of the energy from the level below it. To make math easy, this illustration shows 10,000 kilocalories of energy in our plants. The amount of energy available at our primary consumers is going to be 10% of that, or 1,000. 10% of 1,000 at the secondary level, which is 100, and 10% of 100 at the top level, which is 10. The reason this decreases each time, this figure labels this as heat loss, but it's basically the energy to keep you alive, or to keep whatever that animal is alive. They label it as heat loss because that's where it goes. All of this energy that you expend moving yourself around, breathing, doing all the things that you do, dissipates as heat. And that's why it decreases at each amount going up. This rabbit consumes some of the producer's energy, and before it can get eaten by the snake, some of that energy is going to be lost, letting the rabbit do its parts of its life cycle. So this 10% rule is kind of a rough estimate for the amount of energy available at each one, and it explains why there are very, very few top predators, but lots of animals down at the bottom of the trophic level. We're going to give some different names to the relationships between these organisms too. I'm going to start off with mutualism, also known as symbiosis. This is an example where both organisms in the relationship benefit. I picked a picture of a bee and a flower. Bee gets food in the form of the pollen. Flower gets the bee's assistance in reproduction. Go bees. Commensalism is a type of relationship where one organism benefits but the other is not harmed. So, tree frogs living in trees doesn't hurt the tree. This cattle seems pretty unconcerned by the egrets using it as a vantage point. And as long as the jackal is just eating the leftovers of the tiger, it would be not harming the tiger. Now, it would be a different sort of relationship if the jackal actually begins to compete with the tiger for its prey, and that would be an example of competition. And this is where organisms are not directly relating to each other, but they're both competing for scarce resources. The last two relationships are probably ones that you can imagine pretty easily. Parasitism, this is where one benefits the other is harmed but not killed. And you're smart people. The last one would be predation, where one benefits and the other is killed. So that wraps up the last of our new material. We've made it. Everything else at this point is going to be activities based on this or review activities. So the end is in sight. And I won't be saying this too many more times. As always, take care of yourself and others, practice good hygiene, and I'll see you on the flip side.